Welcome to the Overcommitted Podcast, your weekly dose of real engineering conversations. I'm your host this week, Brittany, joined by...
Hey, I'm Bethany.
I'm Erika.
The three of us met while working on a team together at GitHub and realized we all are obsessed with getting better at what we do. We decided to start this podcast to share what we've learned. We're talking about everything from leveling up your technical skills to navigating your professional development, all with the goal of creating a community where engineers can learn and connect. Today, we are joined by Sarna, joining us from Poland, one of the authors of the book Writing for Developers, and that is what we are going to talk about today. And I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks and hi. So my name is Piotr, but feel free to call me Sarna because that's way easier to pronounce for everyone. I program distributed systems for a living, but I also got into writing first blog posts and then books. So here I am.
That's awesome. To kick us off, what is one thing you're currently building or obsessed with learning right now?
I keep coming back to learning that, what would be the name of it? Like logic gates and stuff. So VHDL and Verilog. So to the roots of how all those systems actually work. So a year or so, I come back to learning all the fundamentals, and I hope that in a few months, maybe I'll learn enough to just order my own system on chip, like the first one. So this is like totally unrelated to my day job, but something I'm kind of passionate about.
It's awesome. Doing things that are completely unrelated to my day job is one of my favorite things to learn about as well. And sometimes that's nice. So there was a co-author for the book Writing for Developers, Cynthia Dunlop, who was not able to join us. She got impacted by the post-AWS flu that it seems like it went around to everybody that went to reInvent. But I know you both co-authored the book together. I'm curious, how did you two meet and decide to tackle this project together?
We actually didn't meet in person ever, so that's a fun fact. We've always only seen Cynthia mostly through Riverside, of all places. We worked at ScyllaDB for a time, and the story started with a previous book of ours, which was about databases. And the way it started was as follows. I was approached by Appress, the publisher. They wanted to find an author to write a book specifically about ScyllaDB. I kind of didn't want to do it, so I forwarded them to the marketing department of ScyllaDB, and we figured out that maybe I will, first of all, co-author a book with 4 people total, and then make it a general book about databases, because a book about ScyllaDB will be out of date the moment it's released, and maybe if we just cover some fundamentals of performance and other aspects of databases, it will have better shelf life, let's say. And that was a nice, well, I would call it a success. It was, the book is open source and available for free online. It had quite a few views. So yeah, I was happy to see it getting popular enough in our niche. And then at this time I was already kind of hooked on writing books. And when Cynthia approached me about writing another one, I just read on the spot. And this time we approached a few publishers. Ultimately we decided on Manning, and we wrote this one. It was totally unrelated to the previous database one, but I think it was even funnier to write.
Yeah, somewhat related in the developer realm, but very different topic for sure.
Yeah.
Writing a book seems like it's probably really hard. And then co-writing is probably another whole layer of extra things on top of that. What was the collaboration process like writing a book with another person?
I like to strongly disagree that co-authoring is harder. It's actually way easier if you co-author with Cynthia. That's the secret sauce. Cynthia is, first of all, a skilled ghostwriter and also a writer. So she kind of took all the burden of pre-editing everything off me. I could just spill out barely coherent sentences, and she would just form them to beautiful English sentences that we could then pass to the publisher for review. So it's way easier, first of all, because of that. And second of all, writing a book, like a whole book, might be a little tough because it might take a year or 3. If you write 1/4 of a book, it's a couple of months. So it's you can see the end of it. So it's actually, especially with the first database book, everyone was responsible for a few chapters. So all I had to do was write 3 chapters, if I remember correctly, maybe 4. And each chapter is kind of like an extended blog post. So just that, and then you have a book. So I would say that co-authoring is substantially easier for a start, especially to the point that I would never actually self-author without a co-author and without Synfa specifically, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like maybe it's also one of those things where like the idea of writing a book seems very intimidating because it's a whole book. But does it feel a little bit less intimidating now that you've done a couple of them?
It would still feel a little bit intimidating for me to read the whole book, but yeah, I mean, half, not so much. Yeah. It would just be yet another book. And if you think of every single chapter as an extended blog post, then you probably already wrote enough of those to comprise for a whole book. So you just do it in a row and then get everything reviewed and published.
That makes sense. I like the idea of looking at it as an extended blog post. That does seem a lot less terrifying than writing a book. And if I understand correctly, you both run Write That Blog as well. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and what it's all about?
It started as a promo for the book itself. We wanted to have a place where we would continue giving examples of the patterns of blog posts that we described in the book that are up to date monthly. The book is structured in a way that a huge part of it is a couple of patterns that we just kept seeing everywhere. If you browse Hacker News, I can pretty much assign patterns as I see them right now because it's like muscle memory at this point. So since we already for every one of those pattern chapters we had some examples, but those would eventually get out of date, and we wanted something that is up to date all the time. So we just started this monthly dissection of blog posts, and we just post them there. That's pretty much it. It's like a natural continuation of the book.
Nice. Is there anything that you've learned since the book was written from that blog? Like, is there any like new insights you've gained that didn't make it into the book since you've been running that?
I think there's one pattern that we didn't capture well, which is somebody describing how something totally unrelated to their work works. So it's usually, I do assign it a pattern because we only have so many of them to pick from, but I'm usually undecided about this one. So maybe I should consider adding like an appendix to the book describing one more of those. But otherwise, no, it's really, really amazing how the initial list of patterns applies to any new blogs that happen every month.
That's really awesome. I love that you all are continuing on with your thesis of the book and to continuing to provide examples for folks to look towards. So that's really cool. Shifting into maybe the book specifically. So as we know, the book is called Writing for Developers. And I'm curious from your experience, what gap were you trying to fill in the existing landscape for writing resources? Was it just lacking in general, or was it lacking specifically for developers? And what are your thoughts on that?
So before our book was released, we did some research if there's anything that already covered exactly the same topic. And unfortunately, 99% of books that talk about writing for developers just mention documentation, which is boring from the start. And we specifically didn't want to describe how to write engaging documentation because it's a moron. Instead, we wanted to share how we think engaging blog posts can be written, and there was just, to the best of our knowledge, there wasn't a thing that described it specifically for technical people, because technical blog posts are, well, there's some things with good writing in general, but they also have some specific things that there should be an educational aspect to them, which isn't really necessary for prose. But on the other hand, there are some things from writing good prose that also apply to blog posts. So yeah, we just wanted to fill the niche, because as far as we knew, there are lots of very nice blog posts out there, so we can learn by example, but nobody, to the best of our knowledge at least, combined them in a book.
That definitely makes sense. I was really struck by the concept of the book because I feel like it's such a fresh take on writing for developers, and it's something that I feel like I've been trying to hone in on for a while with this element of storytelling for developers, like being able to craft a narrative, but focusing on technology as well. So that's really cool. I'm curious, for those developers who maybe think, oh, I'm just writing documentation and I don't know if this book is for me. How would you respond to that? Are there any concrete ways that devs can apply what's in the book to their day-to-day, even if they might not blog? Or is this really pushing towards the blogging use case?
We have a whole section of the first chapter, which is called Why Write? So it's probably an extended answer to this question. And it also covers a huge list of excuses why not to write. One of it is could be summarized as I only write documentation. Well, documentation is usually about something potentially interesting that was implemented before. So you can also twist it into an interesting blog post instead of just talking about the details. And it's just one of those excuses. There's a whole list, and we dealt with each one in one of the first chapters. And even, I think it was even chapter 1, just to get everybody started.
Man, definitely mind reading. That is really cool that you all tackled that already. I'm excited to dive in and read more about that. Something that you also might mention in the first part of your book, but is there 3 things that you're hoping that folks take away from this book? Or if they were to only remember 3 things, they remember XYZ. Is there anything about this book, or is it just generally supposed to be a reference? Or what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Cynthia came up with 3 characteristics of a post that everybody should remember. So I can just quote that. It was an intriguing topic, distinctive educational core, and smooth delivery. And they are all described in the book. But it is a good resource, even if you just want to look at a few examples to get you started. And because usually it's easier if you see a blog structured in a similar way that you would like something expressed, or maybe you just like the style of someone and you want to publish something in a similar style, then going through the examples and seeing what were the good parts of some specific blogs and what have been improved might just inspire you as well.
Very cool. I'm excited because I made sure to get the physical copy to annotate a lot with this book because I feel like there's going to be a lot of takeaways from it. So very, very exciting. Is there any piece of writing, either from you or someone else, that you think every developer should read? Just like a good example of what developer writing looks like?
It might be a little unfair to list just one because we tried to pick those examples per pattern, and they are all something that we consider really good. The one that I will keep remembering forever was one from Tiger Beetle database, because they went ahead and implemented a which ran in browser just to make their blog post cooler, which worked obviously. So that's the kind of initiative I would always support. And it was also very educational and technical and so on. So then that's something I definitely remember. But all of the examples are quite distinctive and very nice.
So we are actually kicking off a book club for writing for developers with the Overcommitted community. And we learned a lot from our first book club, and we're going a little faster this time. We're reading 2 chapters a week and using multiple platforms. We're using Discord and Blue Sky, and we're also doing some sync meetings, video call, to try to make it more accessible for people with different schedules and communication preferences. So have you been a part of any book clubs in the past, remote book clubs that have done things really well that we can maybe steal from?
We were featured in Phil Eaton's book club with the same book, although that one was mostly a email list discussions. And on the one hand, it was quite easy to take part in because you just reply to an email. But then, there weren't any, as far as I know, there weren't any sync meetings or anything like it. So there's not much to share because that one was text only.
Cool. Yeah, we're really excited to have those live discussions and sort of have both the opportunity to participate through writing, which is good practice, practicing what we learn, and also the discussions to involve.
Well, if you would
people.
like to make this particular club more practical, then you can just gently force people to also try writing something along with the book and just publish it, because it doesn't take much to just publish something. Worst case, nobody notices it, but it happens to every other blog post.
Well, that's good. Good advice to keep in mind for anyone who might be participating and learning. For anyone who's starting the book, what would you suggest as sort of a mindset of going in? What
You could copy the author's mindset. So the first one was that we wrote this book totally out of order. So don't feel inclined to read from chapter. Well, I mean, starting from chapter 1 is probably a good idea. We did write that one first, but then it was really a random choice of what we felt like writing. So readers are encouraged to just read what they feel like reading. So in particular, there is no order of patterns that we need to read at all, but also if you would like to just read the intro and then skip straight to patterns because you can't resist just seeing what they are, just go ahead and then you can catch up on all the other advice, and that is in the books. Don't be too strict with the order. Every chapter with patterns has a few blog post examples, and there are also links to them. If you own a paperback copy, then you also have a repository that has all the links, so you can just follow and actually see them, because we couldn't reliably, for instance, include this web browser game inside a paper book. So you just need to go ahead and see it yourself.
We'll include that in the show notes as well with a link to the book. And that's good to know about the book being not necessarily in a strict order, and it sounds like it's really centered around these patterns, the sort of content patterns that you identified. So that's a good place to start and focus if people are looking to focus on one area. So beyond individual skill building or personal brand building, what role do you see writing culture playing in engineering teams and organizations? Presumably a lot of our listeners are working developers, so they're looking to apply this content to their work. So how do you see that applying to day-to-day, and how can developers advocate for good writing practices on their teams?
So I was fortunate enough to join Citadel, which already had a very healthy writing culture. It was maybe a little too healthy because I was kind of forced to write, but I grew to enjoy it, like really enjoy it, not Stockholm Syndrome, enjoy it. And it does make the whole engineering culture also quite healthy, because if everyone keeps writing technical blog posts that are just published for everyone to read, then it's first of all clear that you also understand what you implemented, which is quite important. And then those blog posts usually serve for a better way of actually documenting the interesting parts of what happens inside the company, because nobody reads documentation end to end. And if there's a nice, interesting blog post with some surprising conclusions, then everybody would actually write it. Those posts actually also lure people in, because if a company has an engaging blog, there are some corporations that have very good technical blogs, like Cloudflare or Netflix or others, and they just make people want to join the team that also writes those kinds of posts. And as for starting the culture, if it isn't there, I think it's worth trying just to, first of all, write something up front and then start asking around if it could get published officially as a company blog, because there isn't usually a reason to say no unless there are some trade secrets in the blog post which you should just remove. But otherwise, it's probably best to just write something, then ask, and worst case, you can just publish it on your personal blog if it doesn't work out.
I feel like, especially in so many companies that are mostly remote, like GitHub or like, a ton of companies now, writing is really the one thing that is surfaced, like across different teams. And it's one thing, like if you're like trying to improve visibility in the organization, it's like very, very important, I feel like, to be able to write and write well and tell a narrative that other people can pick up. So it's definitely, I think, one of the best skills for developers to invest in my opinion. Excellent. This has been great. And I'm so excited to kick off the book club. I think we're going to start with chapters 1 and 2 by the time this episode kicks off. And we're going to we have a Discord community already that folks can join if they're interested in being in it, where we'll have some synchronous discussions, like Erika said. And then we'll also, just have a space not only to talk about the book, but to share your writing. If you're listening and you're like, hey, I wrote a thing and I want other people to see it, that's a great spot to do that. So we always wrap up our podcast with a fun segment. And this one, I don't know if it's actually going to be that fun or not, but this is what I came up with. We'll do a round robin so we all get to, admit a little bit of something here. But the question I came up with was, what's the most cringeworthy piece of writing you've produced in your career? Something that makes you like look back and laugh at now. Feel like this could also just be like code you've written, because I feel like that is very something that a lot of developers can identify with. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing. I feel like anything that I've written beyond the last like 3 weeks is usually something I'm like, who wrote that? Oh, it's me. Great. So I'll start and we'll go around. I think that one of the most cringeworthy blog posts that I've written is I have one blog post that I keep around just as like a lesson learned, where it was when I first learned about AI and I was like, oh man, I'm going to copy this thing into ChatGPT and see what it says. And it produced something from like what I had written that I was like, man, this is very obviously AI generated and not great, but I'm going to save it because I think it's hilarious and nobody's going to read that. And now it's on my blog, that it's the Boise Code Camp 2024 post. It is very clearly a lot of AI flowery content that I'll share. I feel like there's a learning curve with AI things where people are like, oh, I'm going to do everything with it. And like, oh, okay, no, never mind. I can do some things with it. The only like very cringeworthy piece of it is it had really good SEO. So when I looked up Boise Code Camp like that last year, I was like, it's on the front page of Google for that, which is when I was like, oh man, that's not great. But yeah, that is mine. Bethany, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So how many M dashes were in that? And lists of 3?
It's probably all M dashes. Like the
Just
whole
a
thing.
string of dashes.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I was having trouble thinking about this because I'm like, I probably haven't posted anything that I thought was cringe, but my mind went to anything I've ever like tweeted or posted on Blue Sky. I just feel is automatically cringe. I am terrible with short form content or distilling my thoughts into a short set of characters. So I've definitely posted some cringy things and just like deleted it immediately because I was like, what am I saying? I think recently I posted on Blue Sky, I was like, I don't trust something that's marketed as viral. And then I'm like, what am I saying? This is the like most lukewarm take ever. So I instantly deleted it. But that was the biggest thing I could think of. I don't have a blog, so I haven't had any experience with that. But maybe with this book club, I'll finally get around to doing that, as that has been a goal of mine for a while. So very excited to have a blog and hopefully not post cringy things. So Erika, why don't you go?
Yeah, I also think that I have not written externally enough. I write a fair amount like internal to GitHub, but I feel like I like pre-edit anything external with the cringe factor. I did like post, I think like when I did my boot camp, we all had to do some kind of like blog post about our final project or something. And like, I guess I would say that, but I don't think it's bad. I think part of this is like, we're constantly learning. And like, when you look back and you're like, well, that's so obvious. Like, why would anyone write a blog post about that? Because it's like HTML and CSS, like who cares? But I think, yeah, like part of learning how to write is kind of like getting over that hump and being kind with yourself of like, it's okay, that was past me. And, you know, I don't have to know everything to have something worth reading. And, you know, I learned it at some point, so maybe somebody else needs to learn it too.
Sarna, did you want to share anything?
Yeah,
If you have anything that you want to admit?
Sure. The most cringe-worthy by far would be my bachelor's thesis, but that's not probably publicly available. Hopefully isn't. But one actually public one, one is cringe on purpose. The first chapters to the database book were written by me, and they were short stories of database performers with purposefully very forced humor that wasn't very funny. And I actually have a hard time actually reading this because it's just sad. But this is also the chapter that reportedly inspired Cynthia to reach out to me to write another book. So I guess it's good that I did. And as for AI-generated content, we also tackle it in the book, because our main advice is to, by all means, use AI to revise and review your blog post, but do not let it actually create content. We also provide some examples of this generated content, which is especially, I think it was generated over a year ago. So the models did get a little better with writing, although not that much. But some of those examples were very, very hard to read, especially if AI tried humor. Again, it just can't do this at all.
Yeah, I'm willing to be an example of poorly revised with AI things. Yeah, I can definitely overdo it, and I think it's a really great editing tool, at least as like a first pass before, to point things out. But I've learned like, oh, okay, I don't really like it actually making changes. I just like it to suggest changes to me and not actually make changes to the thing that I write, because the changes it makes kind of suck. Yeah. Cool. Well, that was fun and a little bit therapeutic as well at the same time. So thank you all for participating. With that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. If folks want to find you on the internet, where is a good spot to find you?
You could start with this repository for a book, and you could probably find me through there, or I can just leave my contact info somewhere so you can post it. I'm technically also on Discord, but I'm a Discord boomer and I just can't use it. It overwhelms me with these flashy images and notifications. So I'll probably miss whatever people approach me with in that particular platform. So yeah, I'm like, email is fine.
Awesome. Yes, I love the term Discord boomer. That is great. Excellent. Well, with that, thank you so much for tuning in to Overcommitted. If you like what you hear, please do follow, subscribe, or do whatever it is you're supposed to do on the podcast app of your choice. Check us out on Blue Sky. Join us for Discord, particularly as this book club kicks off. And share with your friends. Until next week. Goodbye.